2.2 The goal of the providence of restoration. What is the goal of the providence of restoration? It is the establishment of the kingdom of heaven, which in its totality is God's good object partner in the fulfillment of his purpose of creation. The center of God's kingdom on earth is to be human beings. Although God created the first ancestors with that intention, they fell. Hence, his will for the earth was not realized. Since then, the primary goal of the providence of restoration has been nothing less than to rebuild the kingdom of heaven on earth. Jesus, who came to complete this goal, told his disciples to pray, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." He also said, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand." His words testify that the goal of the providence of restoration is the establishment of the kingdom of heaven on earth. 2.3 Human history is the history of the providence of restoration. As clarified above, God's work of salvation is the providence of restoration. Human history can be seen as the history of the providence, through which God has been trying to save fallen people, and work through them to restore the original, good world. Let us examine this idea in various ways, beginning with the history of the development of cultural spheres. All people, in all ages and places, including even the most evil, have an original mind which inclines them to repel evil and seek goodness. People's intellectual understanding of what goodness is, and how goodness is achieved has differed, according to time, place and individual viewpoint. This has been a source of the conflicts which have made history. Nevertheless, everyone cherishes the same fundamental goal of finding and establishing goodness. Why does the original mind irrepressibly induce people of every age and every place to do good? God, the subject of goodness, created human beings as his good and worthy object partners, in order to fulfill the purpose of the good. Despite Satan's crippling efforts, which have rendered fallen human beings incapable of leading a life of total goodness, the original mind remains intact within them and prompts them toward goodness. Hence, the ultimate desire of the ages is to attain a world of goodness. However hard the original mind may struggle to attain goodness, we can hardly find any examples of true goodness in this world. Under the sovereignty of evil, human beings have thus been compelled to seek the source of goodness in the world, transcendent of time and space. This necessity has given birth to religion. Through religion, fallen people mired in ignorance have sought to meet God by ceaselessly striving toward the good. Even though the individuals, peoples and nations which championed a certain religion may have perished, religion itself has survived. Religion has endured through history, despite the rise and fall of many nations. In the history of China, the Zhou dynasty and the warring states were followed by an era of unification in the Qin dynasty. This was followed by the former Han, Xin, later Han, the six dynasties, and an era of unification in the Sui and Tang periods. They were followed by the five dynasties: Northern Song, Southern Song, Yuan, Ming, Qing, the Republic of China and the People's Republic of China. In its history, China has experienced many cycles of the rise and fall of dynasties and numerous transfers of political power. Yet the religions of the Far East, Confucianism, Buddhism and Taoism, have continued to thrive. The history of India has witnessed the empire of Mauryas, followed by the Guptas, Parsa, Chalukyas, the Mughals, Maratha, the British Raj, and today's independent India. Despite the rise and fall of many kingdoms, the religion of Hinduism has survived and prospered. In the history of the Middle East, the Umayyad Caliphate was followed by the Abbasids, the Seljuk and Ottoman Turks, the colonial period, and today's Arab states. Despite these changes in political sovereignty, the religion of Islam has endured and continued to thrive. In the history of Western Europe, we find that the center of power changed many times, from Rome to the Carolingian court to the cities of Renaissance Italy. Spain and Portugal then became the leading powers of Europe, followed briefly by France and the Netherlands, and then England. In the modern era, the leadership of the West has been divided between America and the Soviet Union. Despite these political changes, Christianity has continued to flourish. Even under the despotic regime of the Soviet Union, founded upon Marxist materialism, Christianity remains vital and inextinguishable. If we were to examine the rise and fall of nations, we would find numerous instances in which those nations which persecuted religion have perished, while those which protected and fostered religion have flourished. Often, the position of leading nation was taken away from nations that persecuted religion and passed to those that most esteemed religion. History thus assures us that the day will surely come when the communist world, which is persecuting religion, will perish. Many religions have left their mark on history. Among them, the religions with the greatest influence formed cultural spheres. The major cultural spheres which have existed at various times in world history numbered between 21 and 26. With the flow of history, lesser cultural spheres were absorbed by, or merged into, the more advanced spheres. Through the evolution of cultural spheres, as they were buffeted by the rise and fall of nations, 4 great cultural spheres have survived to the present day: the East Asian sphere, the Hindu sphere, the Islamic sphere, and the Christian sphere. The current trend has these 4 spheres, forming one global cultural sphere based on the Christian ethos. This historical development is evidence that Christianity has, as its final mission, the accomplishment of the goals of all religions, which have sought the ideal of goodness. The history of the development of cultural spheres, each with its stages of expansion, decline and convergence, is ultimately aimed at constituting one global cultural sphere, based on one religion. This demonstrates that the essence of human history has been the restoration of one united world. Second, we can deduce that human history is the history of the providence of restoration. By observing the progress of religion and science, it was discussed earlier that the purposes of religion and science are to overcome the internal and external aspects of ignorance in fallen humankind, although they have been working independently with little connection to each other. Religion and science inevitably must converge. Today they are on the threshold of reaching this destination, where they will resolve all their problems together in one united undertaking. This trend shows that human history has been walking the providential course to restore the world to its original state. Had it not been for the fall, the development of the intellectual capacity of our early human ancestors would have enabled them to reach the highest level of spiritual knowledge, thus naturally stimulating their knowledge of the material world to develop to a corresponding degree. Science then would have advanced rapidly in an extremely short period of time, and today's level of science and technology would have been attained in those days. However, due to the fall, human beings plunged into ignorance and could build only a primitive society, far beneath God's original ideal. Long ages passed before people could overcome this ignorance. Through the advancement of science, the modern world of highly developed technology has now brought us externally to the threshold of the ideal society. Third, by examining trends in the history of conflict, we can understand that human history is the history of the providence of restoration. Battles over property, territory, and people have continued without interruption, expanding their scope in step with the progress of human society. The scale of these struggles has broadened from the family level to the levels of tribe, society, nation and world until today, when the democratic world and the communist world confront each other in a final conflict. In these last days of human history, heavenly law has descended upon the earth in the name of democracy, bringing an end to the long phase of history in which people sought to obtain happiness by seizing property, land and people. At the conclusion of World War I, the defeated nations gave up their colonies. At the end of World War II, the victors voluntarily liberated their colonies and provided them with material aid. In recent years, the great powers have invited weak and tiny nations, some smaller than one of their own cities, to become member states of the United Nations, giving them equal rights and status in the Brotherhood of Nations. What form does this final war between democracy and communism take? It is primarily a war of ideologies. Indeed, this war will never truly cease unless a truth emerges, which can completely overthrow the ideology of Marxism-Leninism that is threatening the modern world. Communist ideology negates religion and promotes the exclusive supremacy of science. Hence, the new truth which can reconcile religion and science will emerge and prevail over the communist ideology. It will bring about the unification of the communist and democratic worlds. The trend of the history of conflict thus confirms that human history is the providential history to restore the original, ideal world. Fourth, let us investigate this issue from the words of the Bible. The purpose of human history lies in the restoration of the Garden of Eden, with the tree of life standing at its center. The Garden of Eden does not refer to a specific geographical location where Adam and Eve were created, but includes the entire earth. If the garden